So before I get into the top 15, I wanted to briefly talk about two movies that I saw recently that I saw because I'm a stupid idiot who made this video way after recording the first two parts. They are two movies that I saw recently from 2019. Dr. Sleep, it was okay, 5 out of 10. It was not nearly as good as The Shining, and I don't think it really tried to be, but the stuff that they lifted from the Stanley Kubrick classic were definitely the worst parts of this movie, and the Stephen King stuff that they lifted from the novel was the more interesting things, and I liked that. But overall, it was a pretty standard, pretty formulaic, kind of basic horror film, and if you're sequelizing one of the greatest horror films of all time, that's not the best recipe for success. Oh yeah, and I also saw Black Christmas. It was a gigantic piece of shit. Don't watch it. In the number 15 spot on my list is Jordan Peele's Us, which is the second film that he's directed after Get Out in 2017. This is a film that, to me, will stand the test of time as something that is a truly organic and original experience from a horror director. Jordan Peele did comedy for a very long time, and that came through a lot in his first film, Get Out. Whereas in this film, it's more of a straightforward, just horror concept played out on screen instead of a satire like Get Out was. And while I can say that Get Out I think is a little bit better of a film, this is a very interesting and memorable experience. There's so much world building in this, very, very memorable characters. The whole concept of the film is very intriguing and done in a very great way. This film isn't perfect. It's definitely got some flaws, but I really enjoy it, and I recommend it as a solid and interesting experience that you won't see anywhere else, really. Great performance from Lupita Nyong'o. She was just absolutely gypped from the Oscars for that. This is a very, very cool film. I will never listen to Luniz's I Got 5 on It the same way again. Is this film really good? Yes. Is it the greatest horror film of all time? No.
On demand this month. Run! Experience the best horror film of all time.
Number 14 is Dolomite Is My Name, which is a glorious return to form for one of my favorite comedians of all time, Eddie Murphy. This is based on a true story movie about real-life crappy filmmaker Rudy Ray Moore, also a huge influence on the rap community, as well as a very ahead-of-his-time comedian. And this is just a great look at his bizarre and very, very interesting career in the 70s. He's one of those guys who's just absolutely loved on Red Letter Media. This film is written by the same guys who wrote Ed Wood. That the influence of that film kind of seems similar to this one. Rudy Ray Moore is portrayed in the film as a lovable character, and it's definitely done very well by a great performance from Eddie Murphy. The supporting characters in this aren't that great, but it's mostly the funny scenes with him that really make this well worth your time. It's definitely great to see Eddie Murphy actually, putting in effort once again into his movies, so this one is one I really liked.
Bitch, are you for real?
Next up at number 13 is Shazam, directed by David F. Sandberg. This is a really, really fun movie. I had a great time at the theater watching this. It is a well-made movie for the type of movie it is. I think you have to look past the kind of kid movie exterior that the movie has, because it's really just an entertaining experience. David F. Sandberg, if you don't know, is a YouTuber as well as a director, and he makes great videos on YouTube documenting the filmmaking process on his channel Pony Smasher. If you haven't seen any of his videos, I highly recommend some of them. They're great. But you can tell he really gives it his all with this movie, and that's not the only thing I really appreciated about the movie's effort is also the acting. Zachary Levi in this as Shazam is great at portraying basically a kid in a man's body. Excellent performance, really convincing. And not only that, but the kids themselves in this are great. There's a couple of moments maybe of kid acting being kid acting, but the guy from It in particular, really, really talented child performance. And besides that, there's great scenes of comedy that are very memorable, and besides that, a lot of adult moments in this that were kind of caught me off guard and were very, very refreshing, such as an excellent scene reminiscent of something in Spider-Man 2 that was very horror-like. That was probably the best scene in the movie. Excellent tension in that moment. Really made the villain character work. Was that scene, and I liked all the kind of adult jokes thrown throughout the movie too. Those were great. So yeah, this is a very tightly made movie. I really appreciated all the effort that went into it, whether it be the directing, the acting, the script writing. This is just a great film, reminiscent of something like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, for instance. I just really appreciate the effort that went into this, clearly, and yes, this is the best DC movie. At number 12, we have a really, really nice little movie called The Peanut Butter Falcon. This stars Shia LaBeouf and Zach Gossigan, both of whom give really good performances, as well as Dakota Johnson. I really liked the story in this movie. It's legitimately wholesome and heartwarming at times. It's got that quirky, kind of indie vibe to it that's, when it's done well, like in the case of this film, it's nice and a welcome kind of thing in a movie. And the writing in this is pretty darn good. Overall, it's got lots of really good humor. It's got some thematic elements that also work. It's really got a special kind of Mark Twain vibe to it that you don't see anywhere else. And it's just a good watch. Go watch it. Ah, yes, The Irishman, the new Martin Scorsese gangster flick, comes in at number 11 on my list. This is a really, really solid film from Martin Scorsese. I'm not the biggest Scorsese fan, but this is really a truly great film experience. It's well worth the runtime, I think. I see a lot of people complain about how long the movie is. Really, a lot of his movies are long. I don't really know when that became a huge controversy. Third act, that it truly makes up for some of the less impactful moments that I think take away from the film a bit in the first and second acts. But still, this is a solid film. The performances in it are all great, especially from the lead and Robert De Niro. It was such a tough race this year at the Oscars for that lead actor category that I'm surprised he didn't get nominated. The scene in this movie is just one of the best scenes in movies this year. You know which scene I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. If you haven't and you see this movie, you'll know which one I'm talking about. A lot of moments that are foreshadowed and brought back later on, fulfillment of plot devices and all that. The CGI was excellent. And that's about it, really. I think this is just a solid gangster film from a guy who has specialized in that for his entire career, really. It has a truly haunting final shot that is one of the best in recent memory for me. At number 10, we have Knives Out. This is one of those seemingly just incredibly well-loved movies from last year that was a huge crowd pleaser. And not only was it one of those very accessible, extremely entertaining movies that everyone could enjoy, it's really got some great subtle filmmaking techniques used in it as well. Really, really well written. Just an excellent deconstruction of the whodunit, where you basically know whodunit at the beginning of the movie, and you just kind of piece things together from the perspective of the person who basically did it. And I'm not going to explain more than that if you haven't seen the movie. Really great performances in this. Daniel Craig is so over the top, yet so likable in his role. I think all of the side actors, the supporting actors, are great as well. Jamie Lee Curtis is excellent. Toni Collette, one of the best actresses of the past 20 years, is excellent as usual in this. And I think the star of the show here, visually and acting-wise, let's be honest, is Ana de Armas. I think she was kind of robbed of a Best Actress nomination, but I don't know what, if Best Supporting Actress, Best Actress, I don't know. She was robbed of a nomination is all I'm going to say. Really, really great joke running throughout the movie involving her nationality. I thought that was hilarious, and I was one of the only people in the theater who caught up on it, which is a shame. And a lot of subtle moments like that I really, really enjoyed. Maybe a couple of plot holes here and there in the script, but I really appreciated its message that a lot of people are bad on both sides of the political spectrum. I liked how it just kind of poked fun at meaningless corruption, basically, from both sides of the political table. And it's just a great mystery movie overall. Really solid and just incredibly entertaining. Now, the number 9 movie on my list is One Cut of the Dead, which I'm sure a lot of you have not heard of before. This is a very low-budget, independent Japanese film. This is a film that is very hard to explain, really. It's bizarre because it's one of the most original films that you will ever see, because it is surprising in so many different ways, and I'm not going to explain it any more than that. The filming techniques in this, it actually is one cut, as the title suggests. But I'm not going to explain any more than that, because there is 2, maybe 3 plot twists in this movie, and they're all delivered excellently. Perhaps some of the production seems a bit amateurish, and that's maybe like the only flaws in the movie, but this is a truly original movie. Very funny at times, very interesting, and I'm not going to say anything more than that. It's a hard one to sell, but if you can go past the first 20 minutes of this movie, there's so much surprises waiting for you, so just watch it. At number 8 is Sam Mendes' 1917. This is a wonderful film in a number of ways. I really appreciate the direction of this movie. I really liked the tension. This felt more like an action movie than a war film in a lot of ways, with the one cut. That's kind of funny, we had 2 one-cut movies in a row. That's weird. With the one-cut filming technique that was used, as well as the just limited dialogue in a lot of scenes, and just the tension that was built with the soundtrack, with the filming of the scenes, and as well as the choreography of the action and the relentlessness of the plot. I really enjoyed the performances from the leads. I felt like you got to know their characters just enough to the point where it did not take away from the movie's pace, but it also gave these characters sympathy and, character, I guess. Just excellent filmmaking on display here from Sam Mendes. This is not his best movie, obviously. With a guy who made such a masterpiece like American Beauty, it would be hard to top that. But this is a truly excellent movie. I saw a lot of people complain about the soundtrack as being one of the flaws of the movie. I felt like it was one of the best soundtracks Thomas Newman's ever wrote. Really, really strong and memorable. Complemented the movie in a lot of ways. And I think overall, this is a movie I would recommend. And it was not generic in the slightest. The one cut technique is not done as well in this movie as it is in One Cut of the Dead, but it's very cool, and once you kind of get used to it, it's really engaging way to present a war film like this. So overall, this is just an excellent war movie and one of the best movies of last year. I also really appreciated Roger Deakins' cinematography. He did an excellent job with these excellent colors and visuals, really striking. And there's a lot of subtle things about the movie too, just beyond the fact that it's a, action movie, essentially. There's actually a lot of things to pick up on as foreshadowing, there's symbolism, that kind of thing, that I really appreciated as well. At 7, we have Little Women, which is such an immaculate and careful film. You can tell when you watch this that there is so much attention to detail in the direction of this movie. Greta Gerwig did a fantastic job with this. Acting performances in this, let me tell you, Saoirse Ronan, I think, may be the best actress working today, possibly. She gives a incredible performance in this movie. Florence Pugh does a great job in this as well. I'll be mentioning her later as well in this video. And Chris Cooper is also really great in a very small role in this movie. He's very unforgettable, is his character. There's one scene in particular with him that is some of the best acting I've ever seen him give. This is a really great period piece film. For someone who had never read this book before, I was immediately invested in the plot. I bought into all the film's dramatic beats. I really appreciated the writing in this movie. There's a lot of funny moments as well as dramatic moments. The heartfelt characters that are created in this are excellent as well. And I really, really appreciated the direction in this movie. Greta Gerwig was so gypped of an Oscar for this, for directing. There's such an easy distinction that can be made in the first few instances of this happening in the movie, where you can tell through particular direction techniques what scenes are supposed to be flashbacks and which are supposed to be in the present. When I walked out of the theater after seeing this, there was a family sitting next to me who spent at least 5 minutes outside of the theater just complaining about how they couldn't get the movie and what timeline it was in, when to me it seemed so obvious, and this was such a great technique to communicate this to viewers, that I thought this was one of the most commendable aspects of the movie. And I almost went up and talked to them and said, did you watch the same movie I watched? But anyways, like I said, this is a charming movie, really, really great. You can see why it was nominated for so many awards when you watch it. It's very investing. I really, really liked this movie. Uncut Gems is the cinematic equivalent of somebody spiking your soda with cocaine. This is a hard thrill ride. It is incredibly entertaining. It is very stressful, and above all, it is just a cinematic majesty, really, to see somebody like Adam Sandler have such a great performance in this film. Not to mention the direction in this by the Safdie brothers is top-notch. There are so many examples of the dialogue being really, really fascinating, in that it will have multiple characters speaking over one another in quick succession, where you can't really follow conversations. This makes the movie's dialogue seem so much more realistic and genuine. This film has a definite moral to it. There's a clear theme and message being presented here, and I really appreciated how that was communicated. It never felt overbearing or like simplified. The spare bits of dark comedy in the film really created a excellent atmosphere to the movie as well, and I really appreciated how dark some of the jokes were in this. A lot of very shocking moments as well in this movie, and the acting, not only from Adam Sandler but from supporting characters like Julia Fox, Lakeith Stanfield, and Eric Bogosian, all do excellent jobs. But the main player, no pun intended, who gives a excellent performance on the side is Kevin Garnett. Who knew that NBA superstar Kevin Garnett had this level of acting chops? This movie is tense, it's frenetic, but on top of that, it's extremely realistic. Speaking about Kevin Garnett playing a fictional version of himself, it really adds to how excellent the movie is that it bases a lot of its plot off of real life events and works that into the plot in a really, really interesting way. The Weeknd is also in this, playing a fictionalized version of himself. Everything in the movie seems like it could have been real. This was such an enjoyable experience to watch at the theater. This excellent and cautionary tale of greed did not disappoint me at all. Number 5 on my list is Marriage Story, which is one of the most compelling and excellent dramas of the past decade. This is a really wonderfully written film with just excellent and extraordinary performances from Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, who both are really, really incredible in this movie. This is a divorce story where you actually sympathize with both characters, and the film really accurately portrays them as people that you root for, but can understand why they're in the situation in the first place. You kind of get to know both of their negative sides as well as their positive sides, which makes the ending of the film all the more just heartbreaking and just completely emotionally draining. It's not to say this movie is like a misery porn fest. It's really more of a kind of heartful dramedy. There's definitely a lot of moments of funny comedy in this movie and lots of memorably funny scenes. But really what's at the heart of this is the painful drama that comes with the divorce that is at the heart of the story, which is a very personal story for its director, Noah Baumbach, who also wrote this movie and did just an amazing job with that, as I previously mentioned. The performances here build so well in the story. There's a particular moment in the movie where it climaxes, and it's just some of the greatest acting I think you'll ever see. Adam Driver especially, some of the lines he has to deliver in this one particular scene are just brutal, and it's such a great culmination of the turmoil and tension that has been building in these characters in this entire movie, and it makes you feel so much sympathy for these characters. Not to mention that the supporting cast in this is great too. Laura Dern is excellent. She deserved her Best Supporting Actress win at the Oscars for this. Like I said, just a great overall movie. This is one of those dramas that is really a great watch if you do it. It's sad. It's very entertaining. It's funny at times. It's just one of those wonderful, wonderful movies. I will never forget my experience of watching Midsummer in the theater. It's the first film I've ever seen in a theater setting that had a scene so divisive in it that it made multiple people walk out of the theater. This is truly a visceral film experience from the man who directed one of, I would say, the scariest films ever made in Hereditary, which is, I would say, one of the best horror films ever made. This is undoubtedly as well a horror film, but it's more of a societal horror film, I would say, rather than supernatural. This is a movie that is kind of thinly veiled as a breakup allegory, really. You can view the whole film through the lens of a massive breakup instead of this horrifying cult pagan horror movie that's just messed up beyond belief, but very beautiful to look at, incredibly well directed, incredibly well acted. I have to mention Florence Pugh once again. I think she was robbed of an Oscar nomination for this. She did a great job. This is one of the best performances you'll ever find in a horror movie. I think she does an incredible job portraying grief and depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. There are a lot of gruesome moments in this movie, also a lot of beautiful moments in this movie. The music, especially by Bobby Kurlick, he does an excellent job with this, complementing the very interesting and artful direction that Ari Aster takes with his cinematography. This film also has a very distinct thing about it that most of the scenes take place during the day. It's a very creepy movie for sure, but for it to have taken place mostly in the daytime and not at night when you normally associate with horror, that's a really interesting thing that Ari Aster employs with playing with the audience's perception of what horror can be, and I really appreciated that. I would say overall this is a better film than Hereditary because of the analytical messages one can derive from it, and it's endlessly rewatchable if you can get past the gruesome and notorious kind of surroundings of the movie. But overall, this is a wonderful horror film from 2019.
Jesus Christ! Fuck!
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is number 3 on my list, and it is the new film by Quentin Tarantino, one of the most respected and most well-liked directors of all time. And while it isn't one of Tarantino's most grand or original movies, it is really an interesting one because it sees Quentin Tarantino take a back seat in his normal directing tendencies, which are extreme violence, over-the-top action, and intense dialogue, and just kind of let an atmosphere play out on screen in front of you. And it is because of that that I think this movie excels and is truly one of Quentin Tarantino's best films he's ever done in his entire career. I'll start with the performances in this movie. Leonardo DiCaprio is hilarious as Rick Dalton, who perfectly encapsulates the 1960s struggling actor. He is so good at communicating this role to the audiences. It seems so natural to us, we never for a second question whether or not these two, the other being Brad Pitt's character Cliff Booth, Rick Dalton's stuntman, that these two are disingenuine of the characters that they're playing. Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio are fantastic in this movie. The supporting cast in this movie is excellent as well. Margot Robbie was great as Sharon Tate. This movie is about, basically, and it's part of the plot, I guess is a better way to describe it, the famous 1969 Charles Manson family murders. They're definitely involved in the plot. I really won't go farther than that. Sharon Tate is a major player in the movie, and I think if you want to see this movie and really enjoy it and respect it for what it is, I would say definitely know about the murders and what happened in real life with them before watching this movie, because it certainly makes the experience of watching this movie more interesting. That's what I'll say. I can't stress enough how much Quentin Tarantino holds back in this movie. As somebody who is a really big fan of movies like Django Unchained, The Hateful Eight, which are just over the top, gratuitous but great violent movies, this is more grounded. This is a realistic movie, and it's a totally firm kind of historically accurate kind of look at 1960s Los Angeles, and that is really interesting from Quentin Tarantino. I won't say any more because there's definitely surprise waiting for you when you finally watch this movie, taking what I've just said, but all in all, I had a blast watching this in the theater. I can't wait to watch it again. This is one of Tarantino's best, honestly.
Why'd you spill your beans?
It's of a merchant's daughter brought up in Callio. Hurrah, me yellow girl, do let me go. She took me in the parlor and said, won't you be me beau? Hurrah, me yellow girl, do let me go. Oh, do let me go, me girl.
At number 2, we have Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, which was probably the most hyped movie of the year for me. Ever since hearing about it when it debuted at Cannes Film Festival this last summer, I was immediately invested and incredibly interested in what this movie was going to be, following the incredible masterpiece that I felt was The Witch, also known as The Witch, from 2016, that he made. This is an incredible follow-up, and I've seen it a couple times now, and I think it may be as good, if not better, than The Witch. This is clearly inspired by the films of Ingmar Bergman, particularly Persona or Hour of the Wolf. I'll start off by saying that the acting performances in this movie are just amazing. Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson both give incredible performances in this. In particular, Willem Dafoe is so believable as this Captain Ahab-like seaman and lighthouse keeper. He nails the dialogue and the dialect so well. And the dialogue in this movie, the script, is just incredible. Some of the sentences in here you'd think were taken from, old tomes of the time, the 18th, 19th century. And actually, in fact, they were. I think a lot of the dialogue was taken from old lighthouse keeper dialect and they tried to make it as realistic as possible. So I love the attention to detail with that. Not only is this film very creepy at times, but it's also memorably funny. There's a lot of great humor. In particular, the opening scene has an excellent joke, which I was not expecting at all when I saw it in the theater. There are a lot of other jokes that I can recall from memory. And Willem Dafoe has this awesome, incredible monologue in this movie that is one of those acting performance scenes for the ages. I loved the mixture of the Shining influence, the Lovecraft influence, and like I said before, the Ingmar Bergman influence. They all kind of come together into this nightmarish but very fun ride that is challenging, but certainly incredibly entertaining, well written, and well acted enough to really keep you invested. There's a lot of really effective symbolism and metaphorical storytelling that I thought worked extremely well. The sound design, the score, the atmosphere. There's not really a lot of films that have come out that are as mysterious and effective as this movie is. And I'd also like to point out it's incredibly claustrophobic, and Robert Eggers uses a interesting aspect ratio to really communicate that. I already have no problems calling this film an absolute masterpiece, and it's one that will be remembered for a long time. And my number one film of 2019 is... To me, Parasite is not only the best film of 2019, it is also, in my opinion, the best film of the 2010s as a whole. And this is a film that, it's apparent to me, everything came together in making this. It's a fable that I think goes beyond just a film. This is a piece of art, and it's something that everybody should experience once in their life, at least. I've been following this director, Bong Joon-ho, for quite some time now, and his previous movies have all been great, from the works like The Host, Memories of Murder, Mother. They're all really, really good movies. However, this is a masterpiece. This is a film to be put alongside masterpieces of classic directors from history. I love this film. It is a beautiful, moving experience. It is a heartbreaking, tragic experience. It is entertaining as hell. It's just incredible. Watch this as soon as possible if you haven't already, is what I'm saying. Watching it again recently, I see even more setups and payoffs in this plot. More subtle foreshadowing moments, more irony, more metaphorical lines of dialogue. This, to me, is truly one of the greatest films ever made. It's works of art like this are the very reason why I'm so passionate about the artistry of filmmaking. The immense amount of intricate detail that Bong Joon-ho put into creating this movie is incredible to me. It's so joyous to watch the intelligentness of this movie as well as the fine craftsmanship on display. It delivers perhaps one of the most amazing plot twists of all time, in my opinion. This is a movie that's not only entertaining, but also a very literary and allegorical experience that leaves the audience to ponder its messages long after the film's over. Beautifully shot, well acted, elaborately scripted, and most of all, a flooring work, which sees a director in complete control of the art he creates. It's a complete masterpiece from top to bottom, a triumph of social commentary, a sensational example of layered cinema, no pun intended, that stands among the classic films of history to me. This is, without a doubt, genius filmmaking. I urge you to see this movie as soon as possible. I was so joyously happy when this film won Best Picture because, to me, it was a sort of a symbolic thing that the Oscars finally realized it didn't have to be an American movie that was the best film of the year, because this is a Korean movie, but it's so obvious that this is the best movie that was released in 2019. I'm so glad that they were able to win the award that was so deserved. I can't praise this movie enough. It's so comparable to something like The Godfather, where it's an artfully done movie, but it's so good that an average moviegoer, somebody who doesn't really appreciate fine cinema, will still love this film. This film could be described as a comedy, a drama, or a thriller, but all in all, to me, I think this can be described as one of the best films of all time.